Exactly. I saw a lot of the trustees were here for the presentation by Jesse and by ProSab on the GOCO grant, which sounded great. And it looked like a good turnout from the public on that too. So that's wonderful to see. Well, as we have the board here, Miranda, are everything on your end ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
All right, then at 7 o'clock on September the 1st, 2020, we'll call to order this meeting of the Board of Trustees of Nettle, Colorado. Miranda, please call the roll.
Mayor Larson.
Here.
Trustee Taylor.
Here.
Trustee Coombs Ismail.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Baumhover.
Here.
Trustee Danforth.
Here.
Trustee Corvallin.
Here.
And please note for the record that Trustee Apt is absent.
All right. Thank you all for joining us. We have 4 items on the consent agenda to get us started tonight. Does anyone from the board have questions or comments on any of those 4 items? Or do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I heard a motion from Trustee Danforth and a second from Trustee Taylor. Miranda.
Mayor Pro Tem Baumhover. Trustee Coombs Ismail.
Yes.
Mayor Larson. Trustee Danforth.
Yes.
Trustee Corvallin.
Yes.
Trustee Taylor.
Yes.
Agenda passes. Moving along into public comment, we had one item come in via email, which is reproduced in the packet for us, and I think we've all read that, both on the packet and email. But we will open this up now for public comment from anyone on any non-agenda item. You'll have 3 minutes. Please give us your name and whether you are a town resident or not, and then we will give you your 3 minutes to discuss. Please speak up.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes. We
Hello.
can. Yeah,
Sorry.
we hear you.
I have a
Sassoon.
lot of technical handicaps. Anyway, and the video isn't working for some reason, my camera. So I'm going to set my timer because I do have a problem sometimes. So I'm starting 3 minutes. So as you know, I'm
Susan Wagner, right?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sorry. I get nervous. This is Susan Wagner.
Thank you.
Yes, my husband and I live on property that abuts the southern boundary of town at Big Springs and Peakview Summit subdivision, and I've submitted a lot of comments on this. The reason why I persuade you that you need to revoke or reconsider your decision is that I believe that the AIM that the town attorney presented to you was so fundamentally flawed that you could not make a decision based on the full consideration of the implications, the legal implications, the ethical implications, so here's my argument in short. I believe, your oath of office requires you to uphold town ordinances and laws. And essentially what you're doing, and she put you straight to an agreement that was drafted by the lawyer for the applicant who wanted you to waive. So you weren't given the primary question, which is should you or should you not waive this restriction on sale? And the only thing she put in there about that specific issue was that this was not typical. In answer to a question, she explained that that judgment was based on the opinion of one person who was more experienced that she asked. She didn't give you data on how often such restrictions are applied. She didn't talk about whether this was not a typical subdivision, and it is not a typical subdivision. It was approved with multiple conditions. The owner was supposed to establish that 3 and 4, 2 of the lots could be accessed. When you look at the lots, and I did attach pictures, there's a serious question as to whether 2 of these lots even actually have 50 feet of frontage on Peakview and whether they are legally accessible. Those are basic requirements for a building lot. I talked to the county assessor's office. They explained to me that there's an assumption when they get a plat from a town these days that those are building lots, but they cannot look behind it. So your reputation and the town's integrity and standing behind documents is in question to me, because this is a phony subdivision, essentially. Those are not building lots and people will be deceived. The Board of Trustees, and also you're undermining the Board of Trustees themselves. They decided back in 2004 that this was only a conditional approval, explicitly said only lot 2 is buildable. Lot 3 and 4, serious doubts, and the owner had to prove it. So by getting him, you're letting him off of his and her legal obligations that they took freely. And the last thing I have to say is, I think there's a lot of fraudulent stuff here, which I put in the paper. But the other thing about the sewer hookup, this is the ordinance that I believe you're violating by not considering explicitly that you are exempting this subdivision from a standing ordinance that requires subdivisions to have access to, sorry, that's it, but to finish that sentence, subdivisions are required that if they applied after October 21st, 2003, to have access to the municipal sewer system. It doesn't say anything about only if they're close enough. And I know Roger Cornell had told a neighbor that they were out of luck because this wasn't going to happen. So I believe by signing this and agreeing to this, you're letting someone off the hook. You're being complicit in a fraudulent exercise and presenting on the county web pages something as a subdivision when 2 lots are clearly not buildable. And you are undermining respect for your own laws and violating your oath of office. So there's my argument.
Thank you, Susan.
Yes, thank you for listening.
Excuse me. Are there any other members of the public who would like to speak on any item for 3 minutes? I am seeing none and hearing none. All right. No, I just want to thank you, Susan, for the emails and also your comments on this. I think there's a lot of confusion going around about it. And certainly, I think if those members of the Board of Trustees and the public who were at our last meeting also heard the presentation from our town attorney on the methods by which motions can be made, and including motions to reconsider that could be used by members of the Board of Trustees should the majority of the board want to reassess this tonight. There could be a motion to reconsider that would be made by a member of the board during other business after the agenda. So that's an option if the members of the Board of Trustees want to reconsider. That's the Robert's Rules of Order method to do that. Moving forward, we have informational items. We have 2 this evening. One is our annual visit from Mr. John Cutler and the presentation of our town's 2019 financial audit. Is this going to be introduced by our town attorney, or are we going straight to Mr. Cutler?
Our town attorney is not here, and I can just
okay. Town treasurer.
Okay. I'm the acting town treasurer right now. This is Karen Garrity. Rita Six is our town accountant, and of course she's brand new with us. So I'll just introduce John Cutler, let you know he's been doing our audits for many years. He knows our financial situation probably as good as anyone, and I'm very happy to introduce John Cutler. And there is a link in the AIM, so you can go right to, I believe we're going to actually share it on the screen. I believe Miranda's going to do that next. And so you'll be able to see the audit while John talks to us about it.
Mayor Larson actually has control of the screen, so Mayor.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Mayor Larson, you may need to stop sharing and resharing, because when you switch to a new format, a new platform, we can't see it anymore. And if it's easier, I can also share if that's preferred.
It's doing something weird on this Macintosh. So
John, I think you're on mute. Can you unmute yourself?
Mayor Larson, I'll go ahead and share it.
I'm off. Yeah, go ahead. Yep. Sorry, I was trying to bring it up and web browser was not happy with it for some reason.
And is John there?
He is there, but he's on mute.
All right, let me,
Oh,
there you go.
okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So we did the audit a few months ago, and it went very well. And so I have the things I have to share with you as the governing board. We did not have any audit matters. We'd have no difficulties in performing the audit. We had no, but nothing too major. We had no disagreements with management, and we had no consultations with other independent accountants. But other than that, the audit went very well, and I know. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm getting like a really bad. I don't know if this is better or not. So I know there's some questions about the.
You're on mute again.
John, are you trying to join from a phone as well?
No, I can't hear it's not coming through the computer. It's just not working.
Okay. All right, we can hear
I
you.
can't really talk, and I get a very bad feedback.
Yeah, can you hear us? Are you getting the feedback now?
No.
Okay, go ahead then. We're ready.
Okay, good. It was very confusing.
I think you should be good now.
Yeah, that's a lot better. Everything I said, it was repeating back to me.
That's never fun. Okay, we're ready.
That was not fun at all. So do you want me to restart all those things again, and when I can talk and not have to hear myself talk immediately after? Or are you good?
We're good with what you said earlier. If you want to keep going,
Okay.
You were saying there was some confusion about I think you were going to talk about the DDA.
Yeah, we were going to talk about that. And the main question is it why is it included in your audit, or what's the main question?
Really just a description of the financial relationship between the two entities and the government's role.
Yeah, so there's a short description in the front of the audit and under note 1, like the first page of our footnotes. So, but basically, because of the fact that they could not exist without you, because all their revenues come straight from you, because they can't levy taxes themselves, so you have to levy them and give them to them. Then you have to include them in your reporting entity. It doesn't mean it's part of your government. That's just a reporting entity, so it's still a legally separate entity. That's kind of confusing sometimes. But if that's the main question, that's the easy one to answer. And there's no way they'll never come out of your audit because they're so accountable for your revenues.
Thank you. I think that's good enough. When you get to the end, you could open it up for questions to see if any of the board members have any questions.
Okay, let's just do that now. I will say that we did issue an unmodified report, which is good because that's what the state wants to see. So that was a good turnout with that. So with that, I'll answer anybody's questions they have.
This is Trustee. Please go
Taylor,
ahead.
Go right ahead. I think that was Trustee Taylor, right?
Yes, this is Trustee Taylor. So I thought it was a very informative document, and I found it excellent bedtime reading. But I did read it cover to cover, and what I'm wondering about is if there is anything here or anything that your company provides that will provide us with any idea as to what's going to be happening in 2020 or 2021? I mean, how do we project from this information? Is there a standard way of taking the COVID crisis, our understanding of the COVID crisis, and our at least 6 months of financial data for 2020, and using that as part of how we plan for the future?
Unfortunately, we really can't. I mean, this is unprecedented. We do put a footnote in your report that says that this happened. We can't predict what's going to happen in the future. Obviously, it's going to affect your operations, and it's going to affect your tax revenue a little bit. But there's no way to tell what's going to happen. Hopefully, we'll be through this sooner than later. But I'm done predicting this.
I can understand that. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm glad you read it.
I was having a beer at the time, so it was okay. That cushioned the blow.
There you go.
Trustee Coombs Ismail? Just going to go down the list.
Sorry, I was muted. I did not have any specific questions, no.
All right. Mayor Pro Tem Baumhover. Also on mute. Trustee Danforth? Oh, there you go.
No
Jonathan.
questions.
All right. Trustee Danforth?
No questions.
Trustee Evelyn?
No.
All right. Well, John, thank you. I mean, I don't actually have any questions either. I know you've been doing this for many years, and it's good to see you again, and especially good to have an unmodified report from this year. I will ask, just, I read through it like Julian did, though, probably not as completely because I didn't have a beer in hand. But was there anything, I mean, you've been working with us for so many years. Is there anything in sort of long-term trends in our audits that you've seen that you think we should just kind of keep in mind, not necessarily issues or concerns, but just, things to keep in mind as we go into budget season this year?
I mean, again, it's going to be hard to really predict what's going to happen this year. And so I don't know. Your internal controls are good. The accounting system is good. I was just looking at the document now just to see if there are any concerns with your systems. But other than that, you were over budget, I guess, in one of your funds. So we had to ding you for that, but that's not a big deal. But other than that, things are pretty good. I mean, I think you're ready. From when I first started the audit till today, your financial condition has improved quite a bit. So I think you should all be proud of that because you're the ones that did that. So other than that, it's just going to be really hard to predict, like in the future, what could or will not happen.
Well, that's what not only Netherlands, but every other town, county, and state in the country is trying to figure out right now. So
exactly. You're not alone.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much, John.
You're welcome. Thank you.
See you again this time next year, I'm sure.
I hope so. Maybe it'll be in person this next time, hopefully.
Let's hope so, yes. All
right.
right,
Well,
thank you,
everybody. Bye.
All right. I have an update on Envision 2030, I believe, from our Deputy Town Manager, Miranda.
Yes, hello. Okay, so in your packet is just a quick aim. At our last meeting, we discussed how I'd only received 32 responses to the SWOT analysis questions from the community. So we felt it was important to focus September entirely on community feedback. So what I have outlined in this aim are just a series of ways in which feedback can be provided to us. We still have our online survey, which I have a link to. People can also call and just talk to us on the phone. Myself and our new administrative assistant, Amanda Sporlensky, are prepared to talk with anyone who calls, and as they answer the questions, we'll type them into the online survey and submit them so they can receive a copy of the responses as they verbally explain them to us. We also have in person. People can come to Town Hall Monday, Wednesday, Friday between 10 to 2 to talk with us in person, and we can help them fill out the survey, or they can do a paper format and answer the questions, which has happened. We also are going to have a couple community events. So this is not an exhaustive or an all-inclusive list. This is just our starting list. But this Saturday, September 5th from 9 to noon, we're going to be at Chipeta Park, and we invite people to come and sit and talk with us from 9 to noon. And then we're going to participate in the 2 September farmers markets, which is on Sunday, September 13th, and then Sunday, September 27th. And we will continue to assess and add additional community events if people want to come and meet with us in a socially distant manner. What we are asking from the Board of Trustees is if you are able, willing, and comfortable to maybe join us for one of these in-person or community events, whether you come to one of those 3 I outlined, or perhaps just set up a table outside of Town Hall and just be available to also meet with community members. I will email the Board of Trustees separately about this to see what you all might be comfortable participating in. But really, the question before the board is, do you have any questions about our community outreach plan, any recommendations? I have worked with our new admin on making some changes to the website, and she pushed out a flyer today that promoted our community events. You'll see a lot more from us on social media as well promoting this. But are there any questions?
Miranda, this is I volunteer for one of the opportunities to speak with people, if you'd
Awesome.
like.
Yes,
Just
I will
let me
email
know.
you. We'll coordinate logistics. Thank you. I won't put all the Board of Trustees on the spot. I'll email you. But we would love for you to either do a community event or just be here at Town Hall one of those days, and we'll promote it that a certain trustee is here and to come meet with us.
Miranda, this is Julian again. How many responses have we had so far?
So I got one more today. We're officially at 36.
Oh, so we're making some progress. Okay.
We're making some progress, but we definitely like more. And so definitely some pretty heavy social media campaigns are going to come forward promoting this, putting things out in the newspaper. I'm going to connect with Barb hopefully tomorrow to push events. And try to get as much feedback as we can in whatever medium makes sense to people. And we definitely want to drive home that if someone just wants to call and talk through the questions with us, we're happy to do that.
Any other questions from the Board of Trustees? All right.
John Scarf with the Mountaineer.
Oh. Question. Sure, John.
How are you all tonight? Yeah, I'm sure the Mountaineer is willing to work with Miranda on whatever she wants to get in the paper.
Great, thanks.
I'm about to send it to you because I just realized it's Tuesday, and I'd love, if possible, to sneak something in, Barb and John, for Thursday, but let me know. I'm going to send it to you right now.
Well, here's hoping for great weather this Saturday for the kickoff event at Chipeta.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you, Miranda, for all the work you, all the great work. I believe this is actually an action. This is an action item. It's the long-term rental application. And on that note, as said last time, Trustee Danforth and myself both recused ourselves from the discussion and any further actions. So I'm going to be muting myself and stepping away, and I will be turning over this action item to Mayor Pro Tem Baumhover.
And I'm going to introduce it. So Mayor Pro Tem Baumhover, I'll start it for you.
Sounds
The
good.
at the last Board of Trustees meeting, the board had directed staff to develop a registration form that would be used to register long-term rentals. The board agreed that the form would be completed voluntarily by long-term rental owners, and that during that time, the board would continue to discuss and review possible municipal code changes related to long-term rental regulations. As a board, you asked that I create a quick one-pager form. So you'll see it is just that one page, and page 2 is for office use only. So the 2 questions before the board tonight is, do you approve the long-term rental form? And if there's any changes. And then the second question is, we didn't discuss this last time, is would you want to charge a registration fee? And that fee would just be used to cover town staff's time of registering and adding to the database each long-term rental. Mayor Pro Tem, I'll turn it back over to you.
Yeah. Well, with that, I think I just wanted to go down through the trustees, and I hope everyone had a chance to quickly review that application that Miranda put out. And get your thoughts, and then we'll open it up for some public comment here, and then bring it back as this is an action item. So whoever wants to kick off, I would say go for it.
This is Trustee Coombs Ismail. I wasn't here last time around, so I wasn't part of that conversation. But one of the things that did strike me is that this information seems to be fairly important to have on public record. I think it's very useful to have this information, not just for the town's sake, but for kind of everyone's sake. The LTR runner included, whoever owns the LTR should probably want this information to be on file. So I do think that it makes sense to have this kind of registration form. My initial thoughts are it should probably be required rather than voluntary. I don't see any reason not to make it required. And on that front, I also don't see, that we should charge for it. And I see a kind of cognitive dissonance there between making it voluntary and then charging for it. Seems like, why would anyone voluntarily, fill out this registration form that they were going to be charged for? So I would say make it required, make it free, and get everyone registered up.
So this is Julian. And of course, we decided to make this free we decided to make this voluntary because we may need to make some code changes in order to make it required. And we wanted to kind of think that through first. But looking at the form, Miranda, this looks to be fairly innocuous, fairly unthreatening, and yet seems to have the information that we were talking about from the meeting. So thank you very much for putting this together. I'm a little uneasy, as I was just a little bit uneasy last time, that maybe nobody, even nice people, may not fill this in just because they have to do some work to do it. But it's an awfully simple form. It seems to be an awfully simple, straightforward form. And while we're mulling over whether or not to require it or not, I think this is a fine way to start if we just announce, and I agree with Trustee Coombs Ismail, this seems like an entirely reasonable form to have on file for if there's a problem, if there's an emergency, just to make sure that the renter and the owner of the long-term rental can get together if they have to, and we could serve to help that happen. I'm not confident that anyone is going to fill this out voluntarily, but I think it is a perfectly reasonable step in the right direction.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with everybody here. I'm wondering how difficult is a code change to make it a mandatory thing? Because, yeah, I think we'll put it out, and then in 3 months we can come back and see how many have filled it out. We're going to have to probably make it mandatory. So probably need to start thinking about that change of code that we need to create. So what is the current code for long-term rental? That's my first question, I guess.
So there are no current regulations on file for long-term rental. So we would be adding in an ordinance that outline long-term, and if maybe it's just registration to start, that would be for the board to decide if you wanted to do registration. And then I know there was a brief conversation about the regulation of it and or inspections, and so those would be things that the board would want to flesh out.
Right. So I think we could probably do that really, really quickly if we just wanted to make it a mandatory and put it in a code. But I'm not saying we need to do that tonight. I just think that, as Julian said, that I don't think too many people are going to go out of their way to fill this out, as there's no need. But it looks good. The form looks good.
So, I guess what I'm hearing is there's questions of whether or not folks will fill this out without it being required. Short of making it an ordinance, I'm not sure how we could necessarily require that. And it seems like if we were going to make an ordinance, we would want to have a little longer discussion around what other things we're going to regulate in terms of the long-term rental.
So Mayor Pro Tem, you are correct that you cannot.
Before we open it up for public comment, or reviewing that, Miranda, I guess the only question I would have is how we would address, well, whoever owns the apartment building owns all the apartments, so fine with that.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify that you would have to have an ordinance. You cannot make this a requirement without the ordinance. And that once released, we will do, we have some records of long-term rentals. We will do the best we can to get it to all of the long-term rental owners. That's going to basically be based off of the information that town already has, which may not be an all-inclusive list, but we will send it to all the parties we feel need to be completing this form, and then also hope that it gets out to the appropriate personnel to complete it.
Trustee Coombs Ismail, can I ask one more question quick? And that is that there is a checkbox for application denied on the second page. I'm just wondering what, if any, of this information is going to be verified by town staff, and what could possibly lead to the denial of the application.
I can remove that. That's just a typical office box that we use, so I'm happy to remove that. There would be nothing that would be denied, since we are not going to double check that information.
Okay, yeah, just wondering. Thank you.
Alrighty there. Can you all hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Well, being that this is an action item, I just wanted to open it up for public comment real quick before we bring this back to the board for a vote or a motion. So anybody in the public, you have any comments, let's speak up.
This is Kim Goho, resident of Nederland. I guess, when thinking about equity and fairness, I agree with what some of the trustees have mentioned, in that not requiring it doesn't seem fair if you're going to require it for short-term rentals. Definitely brings up the equity and fairness issue. And also, as why would you require it for one and not the other? And what's going to happen if someone who is a known long-term rental and they don't fill out the application, and is there a fee, and is it comparable with what the short-term rental fee application fee was? And I would say it should be.
Kim? Any other members of the public?
Kathleen Chip, I had just emailed a comment. Sorry, let me grab it. Chapter 6 already requires they have a license. The STR vote deleted all the regulations on long-term rentals, but not the requirement of a business license.
Not hearing any other members of the public speaking up, so I'd bring this back to the board for more discussion regarding potential long-term plans of requiring registration of long-term renters, long-term rentals, excuse me, or just a motion to approve this voluntary registration while we kind of mull over the process and how we'd want to go about those and what type of regulations. I think there was some questions posed by the public as to the difference of long-term rentals and short-term rentals, and I think those are valid questions that we should really dive into as a board. So with that, we'll see if there's a motion to approve this voluntary long-term rental application, see how many folks who do currently own a long-term rental in town will actually fill this out. And I would question, I only heard, I believe, from one person whether or not we should be charging a fee for this or if it should be free. I myself believe free is the best way to go when you're asking for a voluntary registration.
This is Julian, and I think that when we decided to do this, it really was a matter of let's put out some feelers and see what happens. Having no idea what's likely to happen next, I'm fairly comfortable with letting this go for a month or two and seeing how many registrations we get, and then using that information to decide what next steps are. And I'm prepared to move to approve this.
Is that a motion I hear, Julian?
I move to approve the long-term rental voluntary form and the plan that town staff has for it.
This is Trustee Coombs Ismail. I'll second that, and just a quick addendum that I think that registration is a little bit different than licensing, right? So registering is really for collecting this information that's on this form. So I just think we need to maintain that distinction in our minds. A second.
Okay. Trustee Danforth. Oh, sorry. Recuse yourself. Trustee Coombs Ismail.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baumhover.
Yes.
Trustee Taylor.
Yes.
Trustee Corvallin. Is that a yes?
It's a yes.
Okay. Motion passes. And Mayor Larson, if you're there.
Coming back from drinking my water. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
So the next agenda item, Ray is not on quite yet, so I don't know if you want to flip them while I ask her to join.
That was going to be one of my questions for you, is whether or not we thought Ray was going to be joining us this evening. So in that case, let's go to the SIP funds reallocation. I believe I see Chris P on here. So
yeah, thanks, Mayor and the board. So I've brought this subject up to the board over the past several months about grit removal at the wastewater plant as a necessary process, next step in the process. And so I brought a proposal in front of you tonight, a sort of phased approach to addressing grit at the wastewater plant. And I've asked the town's engineers to give us an analysis of the grit to understand the problem a little bit better, and analyze how much grit we have and the size and so forth, and that's in your packet. I've also researched some companies that provide grit removal options, and based on this information, I'm prepared to bring to the board a proposal to to do a phased approach of grit removal. And initially, when I talked to JVA, I really just wanted to intercept grit any way possible, sort of a down and dirty manhole in the front of the plant or off to the side or something that would intercept it off to the side before it actually enters the treatment process, where then staff could come in and remove the grit periodically before it actually gets to critical equipment. However, through these options that JVA has raised, we could do one step better. And as I said, we can do a more phased approach where we could install one portion of a grit removal system rather than sort of install a manhole, throw it away, and hopefully in the future install a true grit removal system. And I'm not a fan of doing work twice. So what we've discovered is we can install a portion of a grit system, intercept the grit through a pre-manufactured manhole, and then be able to still maintain and remove the grit periodically, but then also be prepared to install a grit removal system in the future. So that's what you have in front of you tonight. And again, this is just discussion, or rather information, and want to get your feedback so that I can bring more information if necessary to you at a future meeting to move forward with this process. Now, in the financial section, the BOT did approve funds for Rni inflow and infiltration repairs that we do every year. And there are some funds left. And I think, as I've said in previous staff reports and meetings, that this sort of grit removal has kind of risen in priority since it does affect the biosolids facility most recently. So knowing that, and we do have $50,000 available in this pot of funds right now, and do a portion of this grit removal, install a manhole, and again, intercept this grit before it enters critical processes, and save some of the equipment that it affects. And so I'm asking the board if they're in alignment with this idea of using these leftover funds for Rni towards this effort to mitigate grit, and then hopefully in future years budget for the full system. So having said all that, I'm ready to take any questions.
Thank you, Chris.
This is Julian.
Yeah, go ahead,
Chris?
Julian. Start us off.
I'm just a little curious about our working now on addressing grit. Is the grit problem something that we anticipated but couldn't fully understand until we had a little process going, or was it a surprise to us to see the grit?
I think a little bit of both.
Okay.
Initially, the plant was designed with knockouts in the headworks, and you'll see that in the plans that JVA had provided in their analysis for adding grit removal in the future. So it's a typical piece of equipment that wastewater plants have. But initially, our initial process didn't really affect our equipment the way it does now, because what happened previous to the biosolids plant was that grit would enter the system. We'd intercept some of it in the headworks and pump it out periodically as we do right now. But then some of it would get past our sort of baffles that we have in the headworks. and enter the first stage of the treatment process. Not a big deal, because initially that first tank, which was an anaerobic portion of the process, where wastewater would settle and biology would occur, and then move on to the next process, and all that material would settle at the bottom of the tank, and we'd hire trucks to come and haul it away. But since then, now that first tank has become a critical part of the process. Now we pump that first tank over to the digester, that anaerobic material, and reprocess it and aerate it more and create a biology to help break down the material further. Well, consequently, we end up pumping whatever grit has entered the system over the years into that first tank over to the digester. Now there's waste that's sort of laden with grit that does affect the pump.
Okay.
So that's, a long answer to.
No, that answers my question very fine. So my question is, of the three options presented, Chris, which of the three do you believe would be most effective and cost effective?
Sure. So, like I said, initially, my first sort of knee-jerk, shoot from the hip idea was, well, let's just put a little catch basin at the front of the plant, intercept grit, and then pump it out periodically before it even gets into the. And logically, that makes sense. However, we don't really want to mix organic material and settle out the organic material and sort of create this septic condition in front of the plant. So upon further thought, that doesn't make a lot of sense, because we really just want to separate the grit. And so it makes sense to utilize the knockouts that already exist in the headworks to intercept the waste stream prior to going through on to the next step of the process and remove grit in a manhole over there. Then you'll see in the third option was two individual sort of catch basins after the headworks. So after the larger materials of greater than 3 millimeters have been captured, and again, have two catch basins that we would have to maintain regularly. But option 1 and 2 don't really accommodate a future true grit removal system. And option 2 really does, because it utilizes the knockouts that already exist in the headworks. Now, initially, and you'll see that in the proposal, that we were just going to install a manhole. It'd be sort of a throwaway, like we'd have the knockouts in the headworks, we'd install all the correct piping at the right elevation to just a nondescript manhole to intercept grit. However, we have realized that there are grit systems where, as I said earlier, we can do a phased approach where we can install a prefabricated manhole that accepts a future grit removal system. That a system that is sort of hydraulically, like a vortex kind of hydraulic system that swirls the waste stream around in a vortex and essentially settles out the grit without using any pumps. We can actually incorporate that manhole into the first, that's option 2, and sort of create a first stage. And so it wouldn't be a throwaway, it would actually be a first step to removing grit. So in this first phase, we would be able to intercept it through this prefabricated manhole, and then plan for future installation of the equipment to be added to this manhole and improve it further and make it more automated. So to answer your question, I believe option 2 is the best option for removing grit.
Thank you very much.
This is
Julie.
Trustee Coombs Ismail.
Thank you, Chris.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. I was about working on the list. I'm going to be the first one to call, Eric. Go right ahead.
In terms of option 2, it says here the interim system will need to be removed in order to install a future full-scale headwork system in that location. So I was just wondering, is that still the case, or is this a kind of a new development that you're describing?
Yeah, so it's a new development, and that's what I was getting at. Again, initially we were looking for sort of a down and dirty, let's intercept this grit with a simple catch basin. Water enter the catch basin, the flow will slow down, grit will settle out, and we'll intercept it. And that is essentially what every option does. But what we've learned recently is with this grit king removal system, we can actually, again, use their prefabricated manhole in the process. And I believe their manhole is around $12,000. You can get, regular manholes, 4-foot concrete type generic manholes that you see anywhere in the 5,000 or 6,000 range. And that was initially what we were thinking, just sort of, okay, let's just install a manhole, we'll intercept the grit, and we'll deal with it. However, we think that with this solution, which is very simple, non-mechanical, like I said, sort of vortex type of system, we can utilize their, proprietary manhole and, again, sort of have a phased approach. So, yeah, it's a relatively new development.
Yeah, in that case, option 2, without the need to remove it in order or twice sounds pretty compelling. My other question was just regarding the budget that was initially allocated to I&I. Just wondering what the impact of not using those funds for that is going to be, and whether or not we're going to need to find the money to do what would have been done relatively quickly if we don't do it now.
Yeah, sure. So the Rni budget is something that we dedicate every year. It's very important. It's necessary to improve the collection system and reduce flow to the wastewater plant, and therefore increase capacity. We've made great strides over the years in improving the collection system. That's a whole conversation in itself. However, this year, so we had, I think, 100,000, somewhere over 100,000 dedicated towards I&I. And we've done quite a bit this year. And actually, I think next, or maybe either next week or the week after, we'll reline a pipe under the creek over by Chipeta Park and address about $50,000 worth of I&I this year. And we've actually reached the end of our season. It is very difficult to get these folks in line. We try literally from January on to line these guys up, and it's difficult. They're busy. They're all over the place. They're large companies that go all across the country. And sort of nailing them down is difficult, especially for our small town. But I don't think it's going to have any more impact than any other year, and hopefully we'll just continue our work next year for I&I, and every year we seem to have an impact and make fixes and repairs. So I don't anticipate any issues.
Yeah, just wanted to verify that you don't project any significant negative by reallocating these funds to another project.
No, I think if after this work that we do this year, I don't even think I could spend it if I wanted to on I&I this year. So at this point, it's sort of money that goes back into reserves. It can be used again for future I&I next year, or we could again work towards this effort that I think has sort of risen in priority.
Thank you, Chris.
Thanks.
Trustee Danforth, any questions for Chris on this?
Just a quick question about the financials. I know that you're requesting the $50,000, and hopefully I didn't miss you already talking about this, and I see that the manhole costs $12,000. Are you expecting to only have to pay the $12,000 to install that grit removal, or is it going to take the entire $50,000?
I'd like a little bit of flexibility. I think it's possible that it could be less than 50 for several reasons. One is that town staff could install the manhole using our equipment and in our time. However, we're stretched pretty thin, so I wanted the option to be able to hire an excavator to make that installation. And then the other bit that we'd have to pay for is hiring the town's engineer to give us a drawing that has the correct elevations and the location necessary, not only for this manhole, but also making sure it's got proper placement for the future system itself. So with all that in mind, plus the other materials for piping and bedding and valves and that kind of thing that are outside the cost of the tank, $50,000 should be enough to do everything we need to do. But I think it could be less.
Okay. And are we going to get kind of final estimates on this once we give you approval to go forward?
Yeah, that's kind of the next step. I'd like to get your feedback, what you'd like to see from me, and then for final approval, I can bring to you quotes on what it would actually take to do it.
Great. That's all the questions I had.
Thank you, Lindsay. Trustee Corvallin.
I just wanted to say thanks to my other trustees. I don't really have any questions. Those were all really good questions. And I just would suggest to Chris to find the option that is going to work for Nettle as it grows, to find the best option and not to go necessarily for what's going to be most economical in the now. It'd be great to just do it really, really well right now and not come back to this issue in 5 years. That's all that I would suggest and hope for. Thanks.
Tanya? I'll just jump on that. I want to really just congratulate Chris and our engineer JVA for looking at this and finding a option that begins to solve our problem, does an interim solving of our problem, but in a way that isn't going to be thrown out in a couple of years when we hopefully go for a more complete solution. Not only just because it's would have been wasted effort, but it's even the $5,000 manhole or tank that gets put in would then have to be pulled out and thrown away. And this way we get to reuse stuff and keep it out of the landfill, which I think is great. So thank you guys for the hard work you put in on that. This is a discussion item, so I want to open this up and see if anyone from the public would like to give any input on their grit removal. So if anyone from the public would like to speak on the grit removal proposal, now would be your chance. Without great surprise, I'm not hearing a whole lot, so I'll bring it back. I think what we're looking, this is just a discussion, not an action item, and as Trustee Danforth pulled with her question, the thing we're looking at is whether or not we want town staff, particularly Chris, to move forward with a proposal on this and come back with an action item with a more detailed budget, more the $12,000 tank. And so we don't really do nods of 4. So I'm just going to call down the list of trustees to see if they would like to direct town staff to continue this project and bring back a proposal. And I'll start, and I say absolutely yes. Trustee Coombs Ismail?
Yes, I agree.
Trustee Taylor?
I was pleased to hear Chris describe the options and settle on option 2, because my reading of the documentation led me to believe option 2 was our best one as well. So I would like the town staff, to move ahead. I would like Chris to move ahead with this. I would very much like to see an estimate on completion of option 2. So for my part, I would say, Chris, I agree with you on option 2, and I would like to see us move in that direction unless some other trustee has other ideas.
Thank you, Julian. And I just was scanning down the list and I realized I skipped over Mayor Pro Tem Baumhofer. I didn't even give you a chance to ask questions.
Yeah, I didn't really have much after hearing Chris describe and answer Julian's questions. Seems like option 2 with a little bit more detail there that we'll be able to utilize that going into the future. So I'd love to see Chris come back with a budget that actually describes that, and then kind of a larger long-term plan of how we're going to actually incorporate this into a future full-scale grit removal system.
Trustee Danforth?
Yes, I think they should go ahead with this.
And Trustee Corvallin?
Yes.
All right, that sounds like a nod of 4 with for direction of town staff. Look at option 2 and bring forth a more detailed budget.
Okay, great, thanks. And again, I just want to say I do recognize that Netherlands doesn't have any money, and I'm not interested in doing work twice or making a system that is overly complicated. As with anything that we create in Netherlands, I always keep staff in mind and operational challenges in mind when it comes to this stuff. And I do believe this is a good path and a good first step to grit removal that is going to be efficient and economical. So I appreciate it. I'll bring back a proposal here in the near future when I gather all the quotes, and we'll discuss it again.
Great. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
And I did see that Rhea has joined us. Welcome, Rhea, as we'll cycle back and look at the Nettle and Noxious Weed Management Plan.
Mayor Larson, it's Miranda. I'm going to briefly introduce this.
I was about
to Rhea.
Just that.
Great. So before you tonight is the Noxious Weed Management Plan that was originally adopted by the town in January 2015. Rhea has since worked on a revision. She did present the plan to both ProSab and SAB at their August meetings, and both advisory boards approved the plan to move forward to the BOT for final approval. Because this is a new item before you, it is a discussion item. However, if the board feels that they are ready to approve the plan, a board member could make a motion to move this agenda item as an action item and then vote to approve. So Rhea, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. I don't have a lot really to add. I think the plan speaks for itself. The revisions I made were very, very minor, just little typos. I think I updated the species list, like I added Japanese knotweed on the list A noxious weeds, which was discovered after the plan was put out. But it's pretty much just all here as it's always been. I just thought 5 years would be a good time to just update it. And just hoping that the BOT would like to readopt it. I'm here also to answer any questions for everyone. Yeah.
Well, thank you. And I think I don't know how many people have seen this noxious weed plan. I know it's an incredible resource for someone like me who is really terrible at identifying plants. To be able to, the pictures there and be able to determine if it's something that should go or stay in my yard. And so I think it's a great resource for the whole town to just be able to use it for that, let alone the longer term plan of trying to eradicate and contain some of these species. So thank you, Rhea, for the work you've done on this, and answering my one big question was what was the changes from the 2015 edition. So if any trustees have questions for Rhea about the noxious weed plan, I'm gonna just do the list here. We'll go in reverse. So Tanya.
No, it's great.
All right, Lindsay.
Sorry about that. I was on mute. I don't have any questions.
Okay. Julian?
Noxious weeds are beautiful. I mean, I was looking at them and they are beautiful, beautiful noxious weeds. It was a very pleasant read just because they were lovely, although we must destroy them. I accept that. But they were quite beautiful. And I'm kind of curious that a lot of these weeds are, it's clear that it's the responsibility of the property owner to eradicate them when they find them. I'm kind of curious, Rhea, how do we get this kind of information out to the public so the public is aware of these weeds? Do we have a plan? I wasn't seeing a plan around communication.
Yeah, there's not really a plan for communication, but I have to say this year I've really been focusing on public outreach. I don't know if anyone's noticed the Noxious Weed of the Week ads in the Mountaineer. Those ads my field assistant and I developed, and then the town paid Barb at the Mountaineer to publish those. We have some funding. This is all through Chris's budget, Public Works, a little bit of funding for noxious weed outreach, and Stephanie Ondelman is taking care of that. She couldn't be here tonight. And so she regularly posts things on some of the local Facebook groups. So hopefully some people are seeing that. But, I really think education is the key in all of this. And, as I mentioned to ProSab and SAB, it may be time to start thinking about recruiting people to serve on the noxious weed subcommittee again, and just really trying to see what we can do in terms of more public outreach. We've also had a noxious weed pull, and on Monday I did a little noxious weed walk. So there's a few little things out there. To be honest, I'm in need of help of doing the outreach. I don't have a lot of time in the summertime to do that kind of thing. So welcome any suggestions that you may have.
Is there a website someone could go to see this list of noxious weeds and how beautiful they are before they're destroyed?
It's on the town's website. Miranda can tell you exactly where it lives.
Okay, very fine.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Julian. I agree. They are like that. Orange hawkweed is an incredible looking flower. And yeah, I guess it's not in Nederland yet. It's good. So I don't have to destroy something that looks that good, but nothing.
Didn't have any questions. Thanks for bringing this back for an update, Rhea. And yeah, in terms of Julian's question, it's not a bad idea to maybe try to resurrect the noxious weed subcommittee, whether that's under SAB or ProSab. I'm not going to volunteer for it again because definitely don't have the time for that now. But we used to kind of do outreach at various festivals in town, High Peaks Art Fair, different places, as well as articles in the Mountaineer, and then do between 3 and 5 noxious weed pulls at the parks. And that was about 4 or 5 years back. So would love to see that again if anybody is interested, and maybe we can put some feelers out to SAB and ProSab. I know ProSab had done a little noxious weed pull and also a volunteer clean up Chipeta Park. So seems like stuff's starting to take off again with that. So thanks again, Rhea, and I guess I will be looking for making this an action item just so Rhea doesn't have to come back before us again, unless folks are opposed. But I suppose we should finish going down the list.
Yeah, you beat me to the next thing I was going to say after we heard from Eric Coombs Ismail.
Yeah, I just want to say Seb has been doing some outreach regarding noxious weeds and will continue to do so. Jonathan mentioned that we did a parks cleanup that included a noxious weed pull where we sort of identified one particular weed that one would go out for and make sure to pull up around Chipeta Park area. And I really do think that those sorts of active community events rather than just postings or flyers, that bringing people in and having them actually do it for a little bit. It's amazing how that's changed my perspective on the way that I see, plants around town. It's completely transformed the way that I understand, our flora. So now I see things compelled almost to pull them up. Like I can't walk by it without doing it. So I do think that getting people kind of involved, hands-on, on the ground, promoting that idea of stewardship and doing it something that's so easy, right? An easily identifiable plant that you can go and remove from, some part of the community that is important to you. I just think that that's hugely effective, even beyond, a web resource. But thank you for putting this together, Ray. I think it's a great document.
And Eric, I agree with you. It'd be great to have more help in getting together for some of these volunteer noxious weed pulls. I can think of at least 2 other areas it would be great to hit before the end of the season. And I've never been involved in the saws and slaws, but I often wonder if that kind of structure might work. But instead of going to different people's properties, we're just going to different parts of town. So maybe ProSab would be willing to take that on. And I'm certainly here as a resource and to help and everything too.
Yeah, I think that the success of the last poll for ProSab really was motivational for folks on that board, and I think we'd be willing to do something.
And I think Public Works could help fund a couple meals to feed volunteers for these weed pulls as well.
Sandwiches are important.
All right. Before we do decide whether or not, as Mayor Pro Tem Baumhofer suggested, move this as an action item and then vote on it, I'm going to open this up for public comment. If anyone from the public would like to comment on the noxious weed plan, either on the plan itself or on our intent, or the possibility of us moving it to an action item and adopting this noxious weed plan tonight, now would be your chance.
Yes, please. Quick comment from Jessie Ansari. Just want to say thank you to Rhea. It's a very well written plan. It's got some great information, and she is hosting some really cool noxious weed pulls. They've been doing some kind of weekend ones and some evening ones, and they're very educational. And I missed this last one, so no, I would very much like to see this moved forward. Thank you, Rhea.
Thank you, Jesse. Anyone else? Not seeing or hearing anything, I will bring this back to the board and would either further comment from the board, or do we have a motion to move this discussion item to an action item?
I'd move this from a discussion item to an action item. Trustee Coombs Ismail.
We have a motion.
I second that.
And we have a second from Trustee Corvalin. Miranda?
Trustee Coombs Ismail.
Yes.
Trustee Taylor.
Yes.
Trustee Danforth.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baumhofer. Trustee Corvalin.
Yes, and I do want to. I could
just
be
saying we're in the middle. Let's finish the vote first.
Yes.
Mayor Larson.
Yes. All right. Sorry, Tanya. We're just still in the middle of the vote. What was that?
Oh, sorry. I thought it was last one. Yeah, I would be interested in doing a helping out our subcommittee if that was something we ended up doing.
All right. I'm sure we'll have someone getting in touch with you on that. So this is now an action item. So we'd be looking for a motion to adopt the Netherlands Noxious Weed Management Plan.
Motion
to adopt.
Oh, go for it, Eric.
Already a motion to adopt Eric Combs Ismail.
I'll second.
And a second from Mayor Pro Tem Baumhofer. Miranda.
Trustee Taylor,
Yes.
Trustee Danforth,
Yes.
Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Yes.
Mayor Larson, Trustee Corvallin, Trustee Corvallin. Okay, I'll come back. Mayor Pro Tem Baumhover,
Yes.
Trustee Corvallin.
Yes.
Okay.
There we go. The plan is thus adopted unanimously. Again, Rhea, thank you for all you've done on this, not just this year, but all the years you've been working on the noxious weeds issue. And it sounds like you have a board of trustee volunteer to help reinstitute the subcommittee.
That's great. Now we just need to find people to be on it. All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Well, believe it or not, of the posted agenda for this evening. Do any members of the board have any other business to bring forth?
This is Trustee Coombs Ismail. I would like to reconsider Resolution 2020-30, approving the development improvement agreement for the Peakview Summit subdivision. There's
a catch there. There's a catch there. To motion to reconsider an item which has been voted on. The motion to reconsider must be made by an individual who voted in favor in the winning side. So there were, I think it was a 5-1 vote at the meeting. So just,
Well, in that case, I would like someone who did vote in favor of it to reconsider it.
I would like to reconsider the
Tanya?
decision. Yeah, do you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, but you voted against it.
Oh, sorry, I misinterpreted what you said. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, no. This is one of those weird little Robert's Rules things that's been used a couple times by the board in the past, where people vote one way to be able to reconsider it later and things like that. So, yeah, the motion to reconsider can be made by trustees Danforth, Taylor, Baumhover, or myself, because Trustee Apt is not here.
So do we have to have a motion to reconsider just to discuss it? I mean, if there's details about it that, trustees want to discuss a little bit more, have a little more clarification on, I think we could we do that?
I believe we could just have a discussion about the entire thing before a motion to reconsider would be then putting it up for a vote to approve or disapprove again. We could have a discussion as to whether or not we wish to bring that back. See what I'm saying?
Right. Because I think what's happened is we've got some misunderstandings as to the ramifications of our decision. And, I know that there's been some citizens that have expressed their concerns about the building and how this might change things. And I just maybe want town staff to reiterate the fact that all of the restrictions on those lots are still in place and will still be enforced. And all we're doing is letting the person sell the lot, and it's not going to be anything that's hidden from the buyers. I think if we had town staff clarify that maybe that would make this crystal clear for everybody else.
Well, the town staff who put the AIM together is actually our lawyer, and she is not here tonight. So I will just tell you from my understanding and what she put in the AIM and what she shared with all of you at the last meeting. And my understanding is that all of the restrictions are still in place. The only conditions that changed is you all waived the conveyance of the property. So that means he could still sell it, but all of the restrictions would still go along to the new property owner. The only change was a clarification of saying that hooking up to the utilities had to follow code and called out that chapter. So that was just a clarification that that was made that is the only change that was made. Everything else still stands. So all of the restrictions, the conservation easement, everything that's on the plat, that does still stay in effect.
Can I make a
Sorry.
Tanya.
hello?
Tanya.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but all those restrictions are basically the basis for the building of the subdivision, the conservation easement, the driveways, all the infrastructure. How are all four of these property owners going to be able to get together with this conservation easement? It seems like you absolved this person of any responsibility of this project. He came in 2004 with a vision, and the town said, okay, well, if you're going to do this, we need to see you make these steps to show us that this can be done. And 15, 16 years later, he hasn't done anything, and he wants to just divide it when that wasn't the agreement. I think because it's such a contentious lot and it borders a very important wildlife corridor, it's incredibly steep, and it has a lot of issues. Why wouldn't it be just as easy to let the current planning commission take a look at it and make a decision? It doesn't seem that 16 years later, we should just ignore the recommendations of the past planning commissions in BOT. They had these restrictions in place for a reason, and it's not that easy to pass that on to the next homeowner, because on many of these lots, they were sharing driveways in the design. He was using, I think, lot 3 as a driveway for 2 of the properties, and the conservation easement was somewhere in there. It's just a little convoluted. It just seems lazy to not ask a little more oversight on this. But what's the rush? What's the interest in us in rushing something that could have a potential long-term impact on our town? And that's just, I'm not saying no, I'm saying let's let the planning commission relook at this, the current planning commission, with the codes we have in place now, and see if it's feasible to maybe give him that allowance that you guys just granted so quickly. Maybe it is okay, but shouldn't we reassess this? It was a contentious moment in 2004. I don't think it was like a clear as day, like, sure, buddy. I just don't know why you guys want to give this guy a green light and a pass on the work and the due diligence he was supposed to have done and didn't do. And that's just what upsets me very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. Eric, did you have something else you were going to add?
Yeah, if I could just say why I feel like we need to do this. I do agree with Tanya for the most part that I don't think that it is evaluated carefully enough, and that I do think that these requirements that were placed were explicitly requirements put in place before conveyance was possible, right? And so even though they're in place for a builder on these lots, the requirements that were put in place were to stop the conveyance of this property unless these things were actually fulfilled. And so I do think that we are letting someone off the hook. We are in a way that is actually, and I say potentially, I don't mean guaranteed, but I think that it's there's a high potential that it has an impact on our town that is not necessarily positive, right? And I don't think that one individual or 2 individuals or whoever it might be who technically own this property, that their financial interest in this property should supersede the public interest of the town and what potential impact this might have. And I do think that this was done in haste. I am not entirely convinced that it can't be done. I'm not like saying I will 100% vote that this shouldn't be done, that we should hold this property owner to this. But I do think that there's a very, very strong case that this was not proper, even if it was legal, and that potentially we have acted against the interests of the town and in the interests of someone's finances, which I think is problematic.
So this is where I completely disagree with Tanya and Eric on that, is that those restrictions are still in place. So we aren't giving up anything. We aren't doing anything in the interest of this person. It's dead property that's just sitting there right now. And are we going to just let it sit forever if this guy has no money to do anything with it? I would rather him sell it. And if somebody else can build it, then it's going to go to the Planning Commission. It's going to come back to the BOT, and we can still say no at that point. So if the next person, can't fulfill the requirements attached to that parcel, then nothing's going to change. There's no, I don't see the risk, because there's nothing that they can do other than sell it. All those restrictions, everything that's set before us with the Planning Commission and the previous BOT is still there. But I'm not seeing the risk that you guys are seeing, because it's still protected.
Can I say one thing? You're
Okay.
saying
Before
buy
it goes,
it.
can we
Go
hear
back to
from the
Planning
other
Commission?
trustees?
I just want to respond really quickly to what she was saying, because maybe I'm misinterpreting this, where she said you can buy it, take it back to the BOT and the Planning Commission, and we could just say no. Well, how is that a good policy? Shouldn't everything be in place before the property goes up for sale, so that there isn't any kind of gray zone that we don't really want? I mean,
Can I jump in here? That's
Jonathan.
where this got convoluted to begin with, is we didn't approve a plan or any development up there. We simply changed his ability to actually sell. And the way it was written, this guy, if he wanted and had investors over the last 10 years, couldn't have even had an investor buy into that development to do work that maybe he wanted to do. If he was serving on a military base, he wasn't in town. He was serving the country, and he was called to a military base in Arizona. That's where he was put. As indicated, he still used it as his summer property. We have a bunch of folks that use Nederland for summer property, short-term rentals, yada, yada, yada. We simply allowed conveyance of part of these parcels. We didn't approve that subdivision. That was approved back in 2004 with this clause of, well, you can't convey it until you do all of these things of the subdivision. One of those things that was required in this subdivision is a hookup to town sewer. Town sewer is not even up there, and it can't be put up there without like 3 lift stations. They didn't realize that in 2003 when they put all of these restrictions on this guy. 16 years down the line, 16 years of life happening, 16 years of town of Nederland upgrading their water treatment plant, water sewage, and realizing, oh, wow, we can't just put sewer pipes down Big Springs and get the sewage from the top of Big Springs down to the treatment plant. We have to have it at a certain fall, and it's too big of a hill to do that without lift stations. So what we allowed this guy to do was have the ability to have conveyance of part of these parcels. When he sells any of those parcels, all of the restrictions for this development that the Planning Commission back in 2004 approved in this very gray way still come with it. So if the new buyer wants to build, they'll have to go to the Planning Commission, tell the Planning Commission, show the Planning Commission it's buildable. They can build the driveway based upon town codes and town ordinances. The Planning Commission will make a recommendation. It will come to the BOT, and then we will get to decide whether or not a house is built up there. So we did not approve anything. We simply gave this guy the ability to actually maybe get this done, because without the ability to have conveyance, he couldn't even get an investor if he had an investor to actually build this thing. We had his hands completely tied in red tape and bureaucracy. And all we did last week was to cut the tape so that life could go on.
And I want to add to what Jonathan said, that the other addition was, because of the way it was written, he could not actually even sell his own house. because of the conveyance restrictions and the way they were written in that 2004 agreement, that unless he'd done all these other things, he couldn't sell the house he was already living in that was already built there. So there was cleaning up some of that.
That was not 100% determined. The lawyer was very vague on that.
Eric, did I see you come off of mute there for a second?
Yeah, I just want to say that I fully understand that this is about conveyance and not about building. It's not an approval to build, and I fully understand that. I mean, I do understand, first of all, that if it is true that he cannot sell his own house, right? But that's a separate issue, right? I think that we can address that separately, and we can also address the sewer issue, which is non-feasible, separately. But we don't have to blanket say this investment that you made and this risk that you took is now something that you can wipe your hands free of and sell it to the highest bidder, right? I don't think that that's necessarily what we should be saying right now. And I do think that we've bundled some things together here that don't need to be bundled together necessarily. So I don't think that it is, in any way, mean-spirited on our part to say, hey, look, here are some of the promises essentially that you made and agreed to. Here's where we are willing to see the flaws in some of those promises, and we can make more specific and precise consideration as to what we're willing to waive. I don't think we necessarily have to blanket waive every requirement that we had for conveyance, just because the situation. I don't think that that's what we have to do. I don't think we need to bundle all these things together.
This is Trustee Taylor, and there's nothing illegal and there's nothing dishonorable about a future BOT correcting a decision made by an earlier BOT. This happens all the time, and it's not a problem, and no one needs to have their feelings hurt. Also, when I saw the first complaint, I drove out to the property. Here, I don't know, but I certainly know that there is a piece of land only two live, has no house on it, and is just as rugged. And whoever is building there going to do what? Well, they're going to blast, they're going to cut in a driveway into solid rock, and they're going to make that livable and then build a house. I'm looking at the property, I come away thinking, I'm not sure how this property is significantly different from a whole bunch of other Nettle property I've seen. And I suppose a builder could correct me on that. It's like standard Netherland, got to put a house here, got to blast a little. So that's my feeling, and I'm not having any problem feeling that the person who originally bought this to the 2004 BOT should be treated as a pariah because he's trying to work out a different way of dealing with this problem because he's shorter on cash now. And I believe the original 2004 ruling was overly rigid and should not have been carried out the way it was. And I feel entirely comfortable saying, stick with the restrictions, but yeah, buddy, you can go ahead and find investors and figure out another way to populate this property.
We have heard from everyone, I believe. So the question is before us is if any of the 4 people present here tonight who voted in favor of the resolution 2020-30 2 weeks ago would like to make a motion to reconsider.
This is Julian. No.
Baumhover, I'll say no.
Danforth, no.
Neither do I. So we can continue to discuss things, but the resolution 2020-30 stands as adopted 2 weeks ago. Does anyone have any other business?
This is Julian. I move to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn and a second from Mayor Pro Tem Baumhover.
Okay, Mayor Larson,
Yes.
Trustee Taylor,
Yes.
Trustee Danforth,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baumhover,
Yes.
Trustee Corvallin, I'll come back. Trustee Coombs Ismail,
Yes.
Trustee Corvallin. Tanya, are you there?
You know, she had mentioned that she might have to pop off.
Okay. Okay. Well, you've got.
Yes, you guys don't hear me?
Yep, I hear
We
you.
hear you now.
Okay, thanks.
Sorry, Susan.
And yes.
Yes, we have everyone.
All right. Meeting adjourned. Thank you guys all very much for this evening. Thank you to everyone who
Thank you,
called
Mayor.
in.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a wonderful evening.